What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, June 11th, and I am taking your questions live. I've taken a couple of weeks off, but I'm back here. One of the weeks that I had off, my son had pre-K graduation, which I know seems silly, but the school makes a big deal out of it. They do a whole bunch of performances and walk on stage and get their diploma. It's so cute. They do memory slideshows and they have to say what they want to be when they grow up. My son said he wanted to be a cat when he grew up. I was not expecting him to say that. It was funny. It was funny when we realized what he said compared to all the other kids that wanted to be artists and lady firefighters and cops and doctors. And my son's like, I want to be a cat. But to be fair, another kid said he wanted to be a shadow, so he wasn't the only one that was very special that day. But we are back here, and we finally have some interesting news here. We did get Aaron Rodgers, finally a Steeler at OTAs, throwing the ball, yay, hopefully connecting with teammates. Obviously, all of the updates for OTAs are coming in hot. Literally, the notifications are going crazy all day long because I am subscribed to get notifications to literally everything. And obviously, OTAs do tend to be a little bit overglowing on players. You can be just the superstar of OTAs, and it means absolutely nothing when it comes to the football season. Gives, who doesn't look good in OTAs? Some people apparently. But, there are opinions. There are opinions that we're getting, and sometimes they are a bit slanted because they're coming from, beat writers that sometimes want to portray the team or certain players in certain situations, and that's perfectly fine. But we are getting all that information. Obviously, the coaches are going to come out and say positive things. They're not going to come out and say, oh man, Jackson Dart is struggling and I regret my life choices. That's not going to happen. But we get all this information and we get the footage and we get the throws and whatnot. And we take in all this plethora of information and we are able to make our own judgments. And that comes with updated rankings. Yay. So let's walk through positional rankings is what I'm going to cover today. The positional rankings that I have for redraft. If you have any questions about anything else, obviously, best ball or dynasty, feel free to enter those in the chat as well. We don't have to be exclusive to redraft today just because that's the theme of the show. But before I dive into the rankings, I do have a mailbag question. We are a mailbag show. Thank you for submitting that in from that 816 dude and I love this question. I love all the questions that I get, but I do love this question. With the pack being your squad, what wide receiver would you love to pair in PPR considering ADP, or would you even at all? I like this question because, one, thank you for knowing that I'm a Packers fan. Appreciate that. And I've got a strong stance on this one right here. So let's talk about it real quick. There's a lot of skepticism, obviously, around the Packers receiving core because it has been wide receiver by committee, admittedly. And from a fantasy perspective, it hasn't quite worked out the way that we have wanted it to. Last year was a little weird. Jordan Love it was still a fine fantasy year, but not what we would have expected in terms of him bringing a little bit more consistency, taking a leap there. It was a weird year. Remember, he did get injured early on. They realized that they could rely heavily on the run game. Josh Jacobs was amazing. Wide receiver injuries were absolutely stupid. Anybody and everybody was getting it. And as that was happening, I think there was just a lot of chaos that was happening. My hope here is that we can bring down the chaos and focus in on the offense itself, because I do not think, that Matt LaFleur wants ultimately to have to run this wide receiver by committee. It works out theoretically in order to have a fine season, get to the playoffs, be competitive. But at the end of the day, he has run an offense where he has had an alpha receiver and it's worked out perfectly fine. If someone can pop and be that alpha receiver, I do believe he will go with it and not have to run this weird thing where, we're looking at theoretical, supposed to be wide receiver one and Christian Watson that's playing like 50% of snaps, right? Weird situations. So looking at this Packers receiving core, this is tough. This one is tough because I am a true believer in general in third year breakouts for receivers. That was my big thing with Nico Collins, worked out perfectly. And that would align perfectly to Jayden Reed. We've seen him handle occasional volume. He's obviously a clear red zone target for Jordan Love, but can he see that volume consistently? Is he ultimately that kind of player? Or is he someone that they want to use in a more gadgety fashion with the occasional carries and whatnot? And while that does help and add a little bit, you worry that Deebo Samuel type of inconsistency can come with that. That's the big question there. Obviously, we can eliminate some candidates here. Romeo Doubs is simply not a wide receiver one. It's not going to happen. Love you, dear. I've got you on a Dynasty team, but it's not happening there for us, unfortunately. Christian Watson is unlikely to return to mid-season at best. And, in anticipation of the way that Matt LaFleur is, slow rolling him and severely limiting snaps, more than likely the case. So if you're looking and thinking, let's get ADP value, because we obviously have a significant dip in ADP. He is way, 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 way back there. If you're thinking, dart throws on Christian Watson, not my favorite thing to do, right? We're eliminating him. Dontavian Wicks, the hype you could have been, but unfortunately not consistent, not reliable. You can't be a wide receiver one, and you can't be trusted to catch the ball consistently. So that leaves us with Jayden Reed, Matthew Golden, or Tucker Kraft. Matt LaFleur isn't afraid to play rookies, so let's just say that right off the bat. I do think that Golden will see volume immediately. But when I'm looking at the person who is probably the most bang for our buck in limited risk in terms of ADP in a stack with Jordan Love, it's definitely Tucker Kraft. He's the most reliable. He's the most consistent. He, eliminated Luke Musgrave from existence, essentially. And from all the news that we are hearing, Kraft is set to have a continued big role in this offense. And when we're looking at production for tight ends, the value that he brings, he'll pay off for his ADP. And, if you want to wait, and the more I look at ADP, the more I like waiting at tight end this year, as always, is often the case. Value is very, very real for Tucker Kraft there, and there's not a lot of risk associated. So that's probably the ideal one to stack there. But obviously he's not going to outscore the rookies there, or the wide receivers. It's not going to be a situation where we're looking at Tucker Kraft and he has a Brock Bowers kind of year. That's just not going to happen, right? So when we're looking at other guys that can give you good bang for your buck, ADP is very good on Jayden Reed and Matthew Golden. I don't think you can go wrong with guys. I think at this point, Jayden Reed is being drafted as a low-end wide actually might be high-end wide receiver 4 and low-end wide receiver 4 for Matthew Golden. It's either low-end wide receiver 3 or high-end wide receiver 4 for Jayden Reed, and then low-end wide receiver 4, high-end wide receiver 5 for Matthew Golden. I like that value on both of them, but my preference there is Matthew Golden. When I'm looking at a rookie who is stepping into an offense that needs to see a consistent and reliable volume receiver, I feel like Golden has all of those qualities that scream he can be a day one contributor. And as the season progresses, it might not start off that way, but as the season progresses, I can see him taking over as the wide receiver 1 there. So in my, obviously have not done redraft drafts yet, but in my best ball drafts, that's the way that I lean. If I draft one of the two, it's Matthew Golden. If I'm drafting Jordan Love and I want to stack, it's going to be Matthew Golden. I like the upside there. I think he has a high ceiling. That's not to say that Jayden Reed won't have spike weeks. I think that can definitely happen. We know that all it takes is like 4 catches from him to have a big spike week. But ultimately, I think the higher ceiling is, in terms of consistency and volume, is going to be there with Matthew Golden. Let's go to the chat real quick. What's up, TJ? And then from Nahal, what are your favorite tight end values? Let's go ahead and pull up tight end values, and then we'll do a little ad break here. Lord, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. I can't even really see that. Let me see if I can expand it here. If you are listening on the podcast, and you want to check out the YouTube version, I do have the rankings that I have currently up here. So we've got, obviously, I'm not taking any massive leaps here on any of these guys. This is pretty in line with consensus. I don't think I'm more than a couple spots on most people, off on most people. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride at the top. Then it gets very standard with Kittle, Laporta, Hawk, Jonnu. We'll talk about Jonnu there in a second, and Pat Freiermuth because of that weird situation and rumors going on. Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, David Njoku. Y'all can't see the bottom there, unfortunately. Let me see if I can remove my banner there so that you can see the bottom of the rankings. That would be good there. I like the Dear Miss Fantasy overlay, but you guys need to see the full rankings. There we go. There we go. Tucker Kraft at 11, Tyler Warren at 12, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth, Colston Loveland, and then the list goes on and on. Obviously, value guys, Isaiah Likely at tight end 20 feels like something that we should be leaning into. Obviously, not relying on him solely, but if you are going with late round tight ends by committee, pairing him up with the Dallas Goedert. Jake Ferguson, I'm a little bit worried about the volume there. In an ideal world, if we do not get the Evan Ingram trade to Pittsburgh, in an ideal world, Pat Freiermuth would be an excellent value. I'll talk a little bit more about, actually, you know what? Let's talk about that right now. I'll improv here because really my favorite value pick, and I'm hoping that it sticks here and we don't have any funny business going on. My favorite value pick is absolutely Pat Freiermuth. While I love and was a Roman Wilson believer and think that he's still someone that I'm drafting in late. I'm talking like last round best ball drafts. That is someone that has potential, but ultimately, if the offense stays as is, Pat Freiermuth will be the second look in that offense. And we all know that when we are looking for fantasy tight ends, that's all we're looking for, man. We're looking for who can be the second look in their offense. And Pat Freiermuth will be one of those guys. And we did see in the latter half of the season, we saw Arthur Smith finally unleash Pat Freiermuth on the world and give him some volume. And it was productive from a fantasy perspective. He's a talented guy. Is that the volume comes to him. And we know that Aaron Rodgers does love a tight end. If the volume comes to him, Pat Freiermuth can be an absolute steal at tight end 16 right there and has clear top 10 potential. Really there. Another one that I love is Mason Taylor. I was actually, I was on a shout out to Steffi Smalls, was on her show like last week, I think. And we talked about Mason Taylor. We were both on the same page that, the value on him is absolutely incredible there. This is another guy that when you're looking across the offense, there's young potential there in that Jets offense. But ultimately, really, this offense is going to go aggressively through from Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson. He's a volume receiver, and Justin Fields is a first look guy, right? So that's going to be his first read. It's going to be another just stupid target year for Garrett Wilson. Yay. But tight end does work out as a good second look with Justin Fields. We saw it. Cole Kmet had very productive outings with Justin Fields. So Mason Taylor can pop there. And as we know, as we heard all offseason and why he rose up draft boards as we went through the Senior Bowl and the Combine and whatnot, this is somebody who is a day one guy. And I hate repeating day one, but it is what it is. He is somebody who everyone pretty much agreed that can step in and has the skill set. He's not a developmental type of prospect, very well-rounded, strong candidate here. So when I'm looking at him stepping into that offense in a new system, a system that we know comes from Detroit and has heavy reliance in terms of touchdowns for tight ends. So not massive volume, but enough to where we're looking at a guy who is at tight end 22 in my rankings. Yeah, that feels like a massive steal there. Other value picks here. Look, if we're going a little bit higher up, I understand the skepticism that people have around Tyler Warren. I 100% do. But at the end of the day, there's a very realistic possibility. And I hate to say this because I am a Michael Pittman stan and I got a stupid amount of Michael Pittman shares, but I'm being realistic here. At the end of the day, Tyler Warren could be the first look in that offense. And quarterback situation is not pretty. But if we've learned anything, it doesn't take a pretty quarterback situation to provide volume to a tight end that is the first look in the offense. So I feel like we're underestimating the potential there for Warren. And that's why you see that nice little gap there between Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland for me. Loveland, as a reminder for those who are listening and not watching, is my tight end 17. So that's a good little five spot gap between the two of them. And reason for that is, again, just super crowded offense there in Chicago, even with anticipated leap in terms of a far better offensive situation and a leap for Caleb Williams. Unfortunately, it's just super crowded and it will be unreliable and inconsistent. So as a guy that you were getting as your second tight end, sure, yeah, 100%. As a guy that you were getting as your tight end one, absolutely not. So Tyler Warren is the one that if we're, want to take a risky little value play right there, does have the potential to pop in that offense and just really take over no matter who's at quarterback. Daniel Jones. Yeah. It's I hate to say this because I feel bad for Colts fans kind of. And I like Daniel Jones. I like him. He seems like a decent dude, like a nice guy. But I do think that this is not going to be a difficult job for him to steal from Anthony Richardson. Already we've got the injury just again, reiterating the issues that the Colts have had with him and the unreliability, the fact that they cannot depend on his health, inconsistency there. They want stability in the offense, and Daniel Jones can give that to him. And as I've said before, if anybody can show out in OTAs, it's Daniel Jones, especially against a average at best defense. Before we go on to our next stuff, we will take a wee bit of an ad break here. And we will hear a word from our sponsors.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams. And then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs. And then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to all in and get $25 off.
As the Podfather said, you can use your host promo code, and it's super simple. It's literally just Tera, Tera. Made it super easy for you guys if you would like to get that, because the tools are amazing. All right, let's go on to, so we improvised. We went with tight ends first. Who does tight end rankings first? But we had a very nice pertinent question there, so we went ahead and went with it. But let's go back to the real moneymaker here. It is the quarterbacks. Quarterback rankings. I've got my top 24 there. I don't think there's anything that is, well, there's some things that are a little bit off. I do have Jordan Love a little bit higher. So sue me. I do believe we're going to have a bounce back year here. Obviously, I'm into Drake May. We've got Dak Prescott, I believe I'm a little bit above consensus on. And that one will vary in terms of how we hear about this injury recovery from him. But all things the same, if Dak Prescott is healthy, and we need to monitor his progress on that, but provided he comes in with zero issues, it is Dak Prescott. We've got CeeDee Lamb and the addition of George Pickens and a questionable run game. And typically what that adds up to for Dallas is we're going to throw the ball. And Dak is going to have good value at quarterback 14 there. But, when you look at the overall rankings, there's one thing that you just really notice. I mean, my God, the value on a lot of these guys coming through is just truly excellent. It feels like, and I know sometimes when we say it feels like quarterback is deep, we get a little bit bamboozled, but I am trusting it this year. It does feel like quarterback is deep. It does feel that way. Obviously, we trust our top guys. There's no one really in the, we'll say, top 5 is obviously very solidified. The Baker, Kyler, Mahomes, Knicks range obviously is a little bit more subject to potential issues that come through. We're trusting that the offense is going to remain the same for Baker Mayfield, and there's going to be no issues moving forward. He's stacked with weapons. I feel super comfortable with this one because, quite frankly, I don't feel like the defense made enough upgrades as they really could have. So I do feel like it's still going to be a situation where the Bucs are going to be putting up a significant amount of points on a weekly basis there. Kyler Murray, hoping for a leap from him. Trust Baker a little bit more there just because we have seen the downturn with Kyler Murray. But I've been doing a lot of the Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. connections. That's been fun. Mahomes back in the rankings because he's just not that consistent top 5 fantasy quarterback anymore because he doesn't have to be. Bo Nix and Jordan Love. But let's talk about some of these little value picks as we kind of get to the top 12 and out further. Looking at Drake May. That one is one that I have, we talked about it when we talked about Dynasty rankings. I have amped up Drake May significantly, and I do feel good about it, and I'm not ashamed of it. When I'm not convinced, right, that Stephon Diggs is the answer at wide receiver 1, but at the very least, it does add something to the Patriots receiving core. May's numbers last season look underwhelming when you look at them as a whole because he had multiple games where he played less than 50% of snaps, be it concussion or having to come in for Jacoby Brissett. It's weird, and you have to kind of piece it together in order to get a true look at how he performed overall rather than looking at the lump sum and saying in games where he was active, he only finished as QB 20-something. That's not amazing. Of course it's not, because unfortunately there were mitigating factors in those games. But in weeks where he actually played the entire game, Drake May never finished below QB 17. That is extremely impressive, especially considering the Patriots had one of the league's worst offensive lines, if not the worst offensive line. No wide receiver 1, no wide receiver 2. I don't really mean that as an insult to Demario Douglas, but if we're being honest and looking across, top teams around the league, obviously you can eliminate an anomaly like, let's say eliminate Minnesota's and eliminate Cincinnati and say, those are anomalies where the wide receiver 2 is a legitimate wide receiver 1. But when you look across the league, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, Douglas would be more of the wide receiver 3 type of situation there. So Diggs being at OTAs and seemingly on track for the season, running around and whatnot, makes us feel a lot more encouraged that he showed up and is enjoying his off season, obviously, with Cardi B and whatnot. That's been fun. I've been following that because why not, But he is there. If he can be active and actually on the field, massive win for Drake May. Rookie receiver Kyle Williams has looked fantastic in OTAs. Obviously, we have to take that with a grain of salt, but it is a stark comparison to what I feel like we got out of OTAs for last year's receivers in terms of guys like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. the evaluations weren't coming in as hot as they are now for Kyle Williams. And I feel like there's a real opportunity for him there. Then you round it out with guys like Demario Douglas. And it gets to be a situation where you're looking at it and you're not feeling like it's absolutely desolate. Obviously, we had the offensive line upgraded. Yay. So everything is looking up for Drake May. So when I look at him and the fact that he was consistently kind of like a borderline QB1 in such a desolate situation, yeah, I do feel comfortable leaning into Drake May this season and view him as somebody who will be a weekly QB1 candidate. And the underrated rushing upside that he has there gives him a very, very solid floor. We'll keep on track with these young second-year guys. The other one that I wanted to point out here is JJ McCarthy. Again, OTAs, if they translated to success, I mean, McCarthy would be on his way to the Hall of Fame. There is nothing but glowing news and beautiful videos of gorgeous spirals and deep touchdowns and just, JJ McCarthy aura, just absolutely crushing the offseason there. His current ranking right now is just a precaution because essentially this is his rookie season, right? Even when you're considering the offseason, he missed a decent chunk of that as well. In terms of training camps. So when we're looking at JJ McCarthy, there's still a lot of unknown for us to sit there and push him ahead of guys that are stable veterans like a Matthew Stafford, like a CJ Stroud, like, or guys that offer that rushing upside like a Justin Fields or even a Bryce Young who popped significantly last year in terms of what he was able to add on the ground. Those guys right now, I have them ranked higher just because there's a bit of an unknown there with McCarthy, but you got to feel very good about it and the value that you would be getting with him as well. Especially in superflex leagues. My God, there's the added value of what we know he can do on the ground. The fact that he is throwing to the Avengers and Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. It's just a plethora, just the perfect position for him to head into. His ADP is going to rise, right? But I struggle to see a scenario where he enters the top 15. It's going to be tough to pass guys like Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert. I can see him passing a Dak, but other than that, it's going to be difficult, especially as we feel more comfortable with Justin Fields and the solidified nature of his job as well. A full season of Justin Fields starting with his rushing upside, yeah, we don't care. We're from a fantasy perspective, we're leaning that direction. So that's why I see McCarthy where he is currently and why I don't think he'll enter into the top 15 and why he is a very extreme value pick for me and somebody that I think is an excellent target in drafts. A few other quick notes here. You'll notice that Aaron Rodgers is not here. I have not significantly raised his ranking. Obviously, he'll give you some spike weeks there, but I wouldn't lean in that direction whatsoever. Caleb Williams, obviously, OTAs have been a little bit up and down for him in terms of, weird stuff coming out, unfortunately, that absolutely has nothing to do with him on the field. And he is adjusting to the offense, but we have a lot of faith there. And his ranking is very reasonable right now. And then obviously Anthony Richardson clearly missing from this. We're not messing with it. There's no point. I get the rushing upside, even if he does turn around a month from now and he's healthy and it looks like he's leaning towards, winning the starting job. I just can't do it. We can't get there. It's extremely difficult, unfortunately, to have a level of trust with him. Let's move on to the running backs here. Running backs are super fun this year. A lot of this again, when it comes to the top 12, I'm a standard girl. You're not going to see any dramatic hot takes there. One thing you guys know about me is that I tend to not be a hot take artist. I tend to be very, very, very lukewarm, reasonable take artist. We're getting you to the playoffs. We're gonna win some championships. It's not gonna be boom or bust. but we're going to get there, right? So when you look at the top 10, just very, very standard stuff. One thing that I will point out just in general here in terms of who I feel just is offering that we should kind of pay attention to there. Don't sleep on Jonathan Taylor. Now, this is the second Indianapolis Colt that I've talked about when I was talking about Tyler Warren and the tight ends. So I'm like, interesting there. But I feel like the worries around Jonathan Taylor are often a bit exaggerated. And I think I talked about it on one of the last shows that I did there, that we broke down like a game by game of him with Anthony Richardson. And quite frankly, there was no negative correlation there. Jonathan Taylor is still one of the better backs in the league. He can handle extreme volume. We wish he had some receiving upside, but it is what it is. And they did lean towards limiting the usage of Anthony Richardson at the goal line, and touchdowns were not an issue for Jonathan Taylor. So this seems like a year that we could have. And I hate to say bounce back, because Jonathan Taylor had a fantastic, strong statistical year last year. But it feels like if there were a year to bounce back to an overall RB1, this could be a fine year for him. And I don't mind the value of him. Other people that I'm not afraid of in the top 10, man, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. So supposedly he is healthy, and a healthy version of Christian McCaffrey is unmatched in the league. I mean, it can be matched by Saquon. That's it. Maybe Bijan, right? But outside of that, at this point, we can't tout the future of Genty too much to, a McCaffrey level. But McCaffrey is unreal when he is healthy. But his health has become a serious risk, unfortunately. And we accepted it over and over again as we drafted him as the consensus 101. And we were burned and burned and burned. But now we've been burned out of finally getting some ADP relief here. And look, dipping to RB10 is not a drastic dip in your rankings in ADP, but man, it's a lot better than spending your one-on-one on him. You now have the choice in terms of how you want to target Christian McCaffrey and whether or not you want to, because he will be readily available in the second round if you want to, depending on settings in your league and whatnot, potentially early third round here. So McCaffrey is someone that could have a serious bounce back year here. He's been on the field at OTAs. He looks a lot different. I feel like when we were looking at him last year, everyone can pretty much say, as he was kind of trying to battle back in that injury, he got on the field. He just didn't look healthy, right? He didn't look like he really should have been out there. Looking a lot different here in OTAs. And when we're looking at this offense, given the exit of Deebo Samuel, the injury to Brandon Ayuk, McCaffrey should continue to be a focal point in the passing game. And really, that's what kind of oddly dipped last year. We weren't seeing those, we want those 8 reception games from Christian McCaffrey, and it wasn't coming through the way that we needed it to. So I like this spot for Christian McCaffrey, and I just wanted to call attention to him in particular. The other thing that I want to point out here, with my boys here, my rookie running backs, obviously we've got Genty way up here, right? But we have Omarion Hampton and RJ Harvey. I've gone back and forth on this ranking, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, J.K. Dobbins kind of pushed this a wee bit here, and I'm frustrated about this because I love J.K. Dobbins when he's healthy. He is a clear RB1, extremely talented, right? So I struggle now with RJ Harvey, and I hate it seems a wee bit vapid to say, oh, J.K. Dobbins was signed, I'm out on Harvey. That's not the case. I'm out. I'm not saying that whatsoever. Still love RJ Harvey. Still will be drafting him. It does make you get more concerned that Sean Payton might play silly games here, right? So that is the only, slight issue that I have. Because when I look at RJ Harvey, I see the true potential for 3-down back roles. When we look at OTAs, and what everyone has been saying. I mean, Bo Nix has been praising, praise is going to come, right? But we want to listen to what the praise is saying. Bo Nix is saying the routes have been excellent from him. So when your quarterback who was throwing you the passes, looking at you and saying like, no, this is a true receiver here. The routes have been wonderful. He's been explosive. That's something that you look to and you say, okay, we might have a potential to get you into that vision of Alvin Kamara that we've been wanting to see. And we haven't been able to see that with Sean Payton. It feels like this is the way, but I do worry that we are going to get maybe a little bit of early down J.K. Dobbins and mixing in with R.J. Harvey. I don't feel a threat from Jaleel McLaughlin. I think we've, heard during training camp or OTAs that McLaughlin has looked very good. I'm sure he has, but we've had ample opportunity for him to pop over, multiple years here. And he hasn't been able to gain a strong stranglehold on that backfield in any way, shape, or form. I do not believe it's happening. And I don't feel a threat from Audric Estime. So this is a kind of wait and see and look and see what kind of role Dobbins is going to have, because that is the only crutch that could ruin this RJ Harvey dream here. Prior to the Dobbins signing, I had RJ Harvey ranked higher than Omarion Hampton. It was an easy decision for me. And the reason for that was when comparing the two, unfortunately for Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris is a contender. Not a contender that will make me say, oh, no, I'm out on Omarion Hampton. It's not going to happen. But the reality is that Najee has been such a reliable running back over the years in terms of health, right? In terms of reliability, in terms of trusting him with the ball. He's just been very well-rounded. And while he is not the explosive back that Omarion Hampton will be on the field, he's a back that coaches love because you know what you're getting. You can trust them, and you don't have to worry. So that is the only issue, because we know the Chargers used a committee last year when both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins were healthy. Even looking to, quotes and stuff from OTAs, Hampton said that Hampton himself said, they are a dominant duo backfield, quote, legitimately. So even he sees it that way and acknowledges that. And that could be him just being kind and friendly to Najee Harris. But I do think that it is a committee backfield. And how much of it is going to belong to Omarion Hampton and who is going to have what role, that remains to be seen there. So there is just a wee bit of fear there. But ultimately, when I'm looking at both of these guys as low-end RB2s, I'm taking a lot of them. I'm taking that chance there, that these are talents that we view as top talents, got into good situations and have literally one veteran back to contend with who don't have official starting jobs. This is not a situation where, let's say, like you won't see Caleb or you won't see Caleb Johnson out there for us because, sorry, I had Caleb Williams on my mind. That's all I could think of. You won't see Caleb out there in these top rankings because we're talking about a young incumbent running back under that coaching staff in Jaylen Warren. It does make you a wee bit concerned. And we've heard that Warren is the one that is more likely to have the starting job to begin with. So they're two very different situations for me. RJ Harvey and Omarion Hampton are in situations, and vocally what we're hearing where I don't believe we have to be afraid that they won't pay off for their RB2 value. And they both, in terms of talent, offer that RB1 upside. Other quick notes on running backs before we move on. Monitor Breece Hall. We've had a drop in the rankings. We're getting good value here. Yes, the Jets have expressed a desire to do a running back by, well, they haven't specifically said committee. I don't believe the words like we want to run a committee have come out of their mouths, but they have explicitly said we got multiple guys, right? And we want to use multiple guys. How that gets settled in the backfield, we don't know. But Breece Hall is someone who the value has dropped on him and could be a good high-end RB2 pick for us with good value here. The other one to monitor that you won't see here in a top 20 for me, obviously, is the Cowboys backfield. Unfortunately, it is one of the, yet again, come on. Jerry, why are you doing this to us? Yet again, one of the least solidified backfields in the NFL. Dallas should provide ample goal line opportunities. It's just a mystery who they will go to. My money is on Javonte Williams because I can justify in my mind and say, you know what, man, maybe he was just not feeling fully recovered last year. Maybe he just didn't feel fantastic. He says he feels better now, and he wouldn't be the first back. I.e. Tony Pollard was, also one where sometimes when these backs express and say, hey, I just didn't feel like myself last year, you do have to buy into it. So it's possible that Javonte gets out there and dominates and earns the RB1 spot. We've got Miles Sanders in there. As a bettor, would not put my money on Miles Sanders, but it's a reality that he could play a factor as well. And then when you're looking into the rookies being drafted, Jaden Blue is fun. 3-down back is unlikely, but we can see contributions. Dallas's offense will be theoretically the same, but it's, we're not seeing Mike McCarthy really. So the amount of volume that we'll see in terms of receiving to the running backs is yet to remain, but we do know that as typically a big part of Dak's game, so I would not expect that to change. So there could be some value there. And then my boy Phil Maffa, obviously, Clemson, rise up on that one. Has a skill set that would be a potential early down back or goal line back as well. So just kind of pay attention there because obviously someone is going to be valued there. It was Rico Dowdle last year. It happens and it worked out. So, take your swing there at Javonte Williams if you need to. Moving on to wide receivers. Let's bring up the rankings here on the YouTube channel. It is Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, guys, if you want to see the full rankings as well, I do the rankings through, the regular Fantasy Pros rankers that we all use. So if you go on there, you can click and find my individual rankings. If you want to see all of them, they're there. But very standard stuff. Again, in the not hot take artists in the top 12 there, really. You get over here into the wide receiver 2 territory, and that's where you start to see things get a little bit fun here. And there are obviously some guys here that I want to point out. One that I believe I talked about in a prior episode, so I won't belabor it because we are running close on our time here, is Courtland Sutton is one for me that just, it checks every single box. And I wish, I can't remember if I talked about this particularly on the show the last time around, but just to dive into it, Bo Nix, when you isolate the year and look at it in chunks of progressing as a rookie, the first 4-ish games were a hot mess, right? Those were the games where we were looking at it like, and he was being, saved by that rushing upside. It was a little bit scary. Things got, on track as he kind of progressed through that first early portion right there. And as he started to grow, that connection with Courtland Sutton started to become more reliable. And as you kind of break things down, first half of the season, mid-season, back half of the season, the progress and the upside that Courtland Sutton had from a fantasy perspective, the more experience that Bo Nix gained, it's just, if he is able to tap into the back half of that season, it's true top 10 upside there on a weekly basis. He was a top 10 receiver in the back half of the season. I feel like it's being overlooked. I've talked about it way too many times here, but Courtland Sutton is one that I am just absolutely just drafting like a complete menace. And if that one fails, then woe is me. It's going to look bad here, but I'll stand on business with it. Courtland Sutton is somebody who I feel has just such a massive opportunity if Bo Nix continues as is. He didn't even have to make a leap. Just continue as you were. And the connection there will be fantastic. We had the addition, obviously, in the run game. We talked about RJ Harvey, and hopefully he can get some good, consistent contributions there. We had the addition of Evan Ingram. I like that addition. I didn't talk about him when we talked earlier about the value because, the ranking right now, I wouldn't say it's more of a value play for him. I feel like he's on par with where he should be. So I say on par. That's funny. You guys know I do golf. I've got more than 10 golf DFS lineups to do for by the end of the night for the US Open. So I'm going to be awake. I'm drinking coffee for the rest of the evening. But Cortland Sutton there. If we can just get Bo Nix continuing in the same direction that he was. I know there's been a lot of fear because everyone wants to try and identify the CJ Stroud, right? Everyone wants to identify the CJ Stroud, the second year slump, somebody who we were just expecting the moon of and let us down there. I understand that when you're looking at second year quarterbacks as a whole, the only one that can fit technically is Cortland Sutton, or is Bo Nix. He's the only one that can technically fit that profile because you have to eliminate guys like JJ McCarthy who didn't play. You can't include a Drake May who obviously had that was not a breakout year. That was a severely hampered year by a bad offense. Jane Daniels has extreme rushing upside. So when you're looking at those second year quarterbacks, and obviously Caleb Williams has been put into an excellent offensive position and should be in the position to make a leap. Bo Nix is the one who popped aggressively, and Profiles is the one that can have that second year slump there. But when I look at him and I look at why players have, the second year slumps, Denver has not lost any speed on where they are in terms of their offense. We shouldn't have any issues of offensive line being a problem. Defensively, my God, they got even better somehow. That was, I think I talked about it when we did the first post-draft show, but Denver's move in the first round to draft at corner was just a complete menace move, and I loved it. And I think it was perfect, and it's going to be so much fun and absolutely terrifying ranking players when when they play against Denver. Because how are you going to complete passes on them? I mean, early on as we're getting rookies settled in, be a little bit easier, but their secondary was already just absolutely stupid as a whole, even outside of it's just ridiculous. So I fear we're on the path where the back half of the season is just going to be an absolute nightmare. Bo Nix is going to be in competitive games. He's not going to put into situations where he is panicking, chucking the ball. It's going to be very steady. He should continue to be a very reliable player. He got an upgrade in running game. So overall, just still feel super positive about Bo Nix and the connection that he has with Cortland Sutton. So I am absolutely higher than consensus on that one. I will be higher than consensus on that one, and I'm not going to stop. Someone that I'm lower on consensus, unfortunately, and I've been speaking glowingly, and this is not a knock whatsoever, but T. Higgins as a mid to low end wide receiver 2 feels like the appropriate ranking. I can just no longer get behind, and I understand why people might be getting behind it because, okay, he's got the contract. Maybe that makes things a little bit better in terms of, a ankle tweak, not making him sit out for 3 weeks. Right. But unfortunately, just consistently throughout his career, the ceiling has been very clear. In terms of the overall production he has for the season as a whole. So that one is one that I'm a little bit lower on because I would just personally rather lean into guys like Garrett Wilson. I feel more comfortable with that potential volume there. I would rather have a Jackson Smith and Jigba. I want these wide receiver ones where I understand their quarterback situation is definitely not what it is in Cincinnati for T. Higgins, but they have ample opportunity for volume, and we simply cannot pass it up. What is not on this list, and I do want to mention here, because it's an extreme value pick. It's not a top 24 pick. I've talked about it before, but I'll reiterate it here. Ricky Pearsall is someone that I'll continue to be on consistently. The 49ers offense as a whole, I mean, quite frankly, when you're looking at last year was a down year, right? This year is a potential bounce back year. I mean, even if you look at Vegas, they're still expected to be take a significant leap back into prominence here, right? In terms of the predictions for their, playoff odds and Super Bowl odds and whatnot. So there's an expected bounce back there, but the bounce back is not being reflected in the ADP for anyone. The only one who has an appropriate ADP is George Kittle, and who still with his appropriate ADP is actually very good value. Where I'm, terrified of drafting and Brock Bowers is so wonderful, but where I'm terrified of drafting a tight end at the end of the first round, you start to get that massive gap between him and Trey McBride, and then down to George Kittle. Kittle is actually a strong value pick because of the ADP gap that you're getting there, and the fact that we know we're probably not going to have Brandon Ayuk to begin the season, and he's already, he's not on the field. Right. We have no timeline on his recovery. He ain't at OTAs. And he is yet again disgruntled. Brandon, please. It doesn't add up to us getting him back anytime soon. He may be the riskiest pick of the 49ers offense. And even then, so is still decent value, but I can't get there with that. But when you're looking at the value that we're getting for the dip in ADP on Christian McCaffrey, you look at Brock Purdy barely checking in right outside he's not a QB1 type. And I'm not saying he should be, right? Just when you're looking at the rankings, he probably should not be that guy, but we know that he has consistent QB1 upside that you're getting at a QB2 value. Then we've got Ricky Pearsall, who I love Juwan Jennings. I roster Juwan Jennings, and what a boon to be able to have that come into fantasy existence. But at the end of the day, I do feel like Juwan benefits more from the absence of Brandon Ayuk, and Ricky Pearsall benefits from the trade of Deebo Samuel. So when I'm looking at the two, I think the one that from a consistency perspective throughout the year, and the one with the more high volume. Now, obviously, the ceiling for Juwan Jennings is stupid, right? We've seen it. But Ricky Pearsall is the one that I think has just significant value here in his being widely underdrafted. Again, Kittle, focal point, Juwan Jennings, benefiting from Brandon Ayuk's absence, and still a strong value pick as well. Definitely don't fade Juwan Jennings. His value is excellent, but Pearsall is being underestimated. We saw that kind of back half increase in usage. We saw at the end of the season, the last two games, the breakout performances from him where he got that top 10 finish and then had another where he had a top 15 finish. The opportunity is real there for him, and it's being underestimated, and it's so easy to draft him, and it's not going to rise because he's got a minor hamstring injury right now, so he's not at OTAs, but it appears to be precautionary and not a major issue. Monitor it, but at his ADP, it is what it is, man. We're loving it. Other guys to point out as well, Devontae Adams, obviously at wide receiver 19, feels like stupid value here. I can't remember if I'm significantly off on his ranking compared to consensus. I feel like there's a variance, but I can't remember. I feel like I might be a little bit higher, but again, that's coming off the top of the dome there. But again, one, he's reportedly having a very positive impact on Puka Nacua, so we love to see that. And he just fits so well into the role that Cooper Kupp had. So I'm really excited to see this combination here. And he'll be happy in LA. Really, with Devontae Adams, it's like, can you be happy? And he's in California. He will be happy. He's with a successful winning team. He's with a competent quarterback. He'll be a happy man. As long as he's winning and he has real Super Bowl upside and opportunity there. So he'll be happy. Another one that I want to point out who is not on this top 24 list, but is apparently doing very well at OTAs, Tera McMillan is doing very well in training camp. He's in a good situation. Lots of veteran mentorship there from Adam Thielen and my boy Hunter Renfrow. And, I love Bryce Young. That's my boy. And the connection is growing strong with them. That has been a fun little secondary superflex sack that's been that I've been loving as well there. Just because of the upside that Bryce Young offers and the real wide receiver one opportunity that we have there for Tera McMillan. What's up, Albert? How's it going? Thank you for joining in. But let's wrap up the show, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. Again, if you are listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube channel live, we are live. And I appreciate you all tuning in. So you're welcome anytime to come join us live and drop questions live. And other than that, again, we'll have continued shows here. As a reminder, please make sure you are subscribed to the podcast on all podcast platforms for the Dear Miss Fantasy Show if you're not already, and make sure that, of course, you are subscribed to Player Profiler. And then if you're in the mood to subscribe and follow and whatnot, you got me, man. It's Tera Time, ITSTERATIME, literally everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much everywhere, right? And of course, you can follow me for all your sports content as well. As previously mentioned, well, it's a little late for that, but well, we've got NBA finals, and so unfortunately, we probably won't get into NBA content until next year, since we're wrapping that up. But golf as well, college football, all that good stuff. So make sure that you're following me for all your wonderful sports content, and of course, my love of football. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all for joining the live. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to drop them on social media to me. And I'll talk to you again next week, guys. Thank you.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of two players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go!